It's now easier than ever to get ahead of 99% of other competitor agencies if you just use AI correctly. Over the last few years, it's clear that today, whatever AI model you're using is only just getting better and better and better. But here's the thing. Most people don't even know how to prompt AI effectively, let alone select the right one for the job, which means your results can be clearly improved no matter what you do or what type of business that you own. So in this video, I'm going to break down 7 ways to use AI to get ahead of 99% of other agencies, even if you have hardly any experience with it, so you can begin helping other agencies grow. First and foremost is to learn the fundamentals. There has been one thing that will never change with AI models, and that is the fact that large language models, also known as LLMs, always have one job. That is to receive an input, and it will always give you an output. The first thing to master AI and get ahead is to remember the term RTO, which I define as role, task, and output. Starting with the role, you will always want to define the role that the LLM is and how its persona is going to respond to you. So if I even went to ChatGPT and I started with, why is the sky blue? We have no control on how it's actually going to respond, and it could come up with literally anything that it wants. But if I were to define the role as, you are a kindergarten teacher, why is the sky blue? Here's a kindergarten teacher version. The sky looks blue because sunlight gets mixed up with the air. When the sun shines, the light has lots of colors like a rainbow. But if I were to change the role to, you are a college professor at Harvard University, why is the sky blue? You can see right here, it uses a lot more verbiage, physical phenomenon describing how lights interact with particles. The sunlight is not white, it contains all colors. We're actually even defining the Rayleigh scattering, all sorts of things, right? This is why I would define the role, because clearly you can see the difference here and how I defined it by asking the same question. The next one is going to be the task. With the task, you want to define the task that you want the LLM to do. This is where you will really want to spend some time in articulating the task, including the steps of how to do it with the detail of how you want it performed. You'll also want to give it good and bad examples, along with guardrails around that task on how you wanted to process it. So we're going to say, you are a kindergarten teacher. Your role is to tell your students on why the sky is blue in the most creative way you can possibly think of, so that they go home and tell all of their parents and siblings on what they learned today and that they actually remember. The task is to articulate to them why the sky is blue in such a way that you believe they will remember forever. Do not try to overthink it. Don't get too much into the science, but talk about ways that the sky is blue in any case that they might think and share with their friends. All right, so we've defined the role, we define the task, and we're saying right here, all right, class, gather your rainbow rug, because today we're going to learn why the sky is blue. And I promise you'll remember this forever. It's almost giving us like a story. It tried green, but the tree said, hey, that's our color. Tried red, but the ladybug said, excuse me, we already called red. So we define the role and the task. We're going to go role task with Harvard professor. We're going to use speech to text in this aspect. You are a Harvard professor, and your task is to articulate to your ready-to-be graduate science major students why the sky is blue and why you should convince them that the sky is blue. Do not say too many science. Do not dive into details, because clearly they have learned on the real reason why the sky is blue, but lead them into a way that actually inspires them to think when they look up in the sky that the sky is actually going to be blue at first glance. So that way, when they are actually graduating, they're not only going to remember why the sky is blue, but they're going to remember you and the story that you told on why you should think that the sky is blue, and don't BS them. Here's how I would deliver it. Why is the sky blue? The last lecture version. Ladies and gentlemen, you already know the scientific explanation. You study the Rayleigh scattering, wavelengths, molecules, and whole beautiful chain of cause and effect. So you can clearly see we've defined the role, we've defined the task, and then we can see that our results vary big time. The next fundamental thing to know is the O, which is output. Defining the output is absolutely critical because it controls the narrative and how you want to consume or use the output. We're going to say, you are a Harvard professor, and your job is to articulate to your students in the most scientific way of why the sky is blue. I want you to articulate this in such a way that is effective, use your words wisely, and the way I want you to output this is in a poem that is no more than 4 words per line. And I want this to be in the most creative way that you can possibly think of so that they remember this poem forever. You can see 4 word per line poem. So I've defined the output in such a way that I can easily copy and paste this. I'm going to ask for it to define it or to output in a much more different way. Now what I want you to do is to take this same poem, but I want you to output this in JSON format. So that way it's structured for me to be able to articulate this and pass this through. And we have JSON. So you can see clearly when I define the output as well that I am really honing down. The next way to get ahead of 99% of agencies is selecting the right model for the job. So very simply, what I've seen in the past is that large language models are coming out. They're always getting smarter and better all the time. But there's 3 things that you'll always notice is that you always have a small model, middle model, and then a large language model. We have GPT mini or GPT nano, and they have GPT regular, right? And then the biggest thing you'll notice here is there's usually going to be parameters that are defined on how big they are, and they're usually by billion, right? So sometimes you'll have like GPT OSS, you'll have like 20B, whereas a more middle size, this is kind of still a small size, but then GPT also has what you call GPT OSS, and then you have 120B. But you can see right here, usually what you'll want to do is to select the right model for the right job. So I like to correlate these big, medium, small LLMs, almost like you're asking like a 5-year-old to do a task. Then you also have Claude. So you have Claude for the big, you have Opus, like 4.1 is the big one right now. Then you have Sonnet, 4.5 is the recent one. And then this guy, you have Haiku. Usually these ones right here, the big guys, you'll want to use like college professor status. You'll want to be like, look, I need you to analyze this 1,000,000-page PDF and talk about conquering the world and coming up with this amazing philosophy and theoretical solution to your existence, right? But you wouldn't ask a college professor to get some crayons and go coloring a color book. This is something like a haiku can do, where you can ask like a little 5-year-old to be like, I need you to do this very small task, and it's usually pretty good. The middle one, this is a good daily driver for like coding. I'd say a lot of the stuff I do is 4.5 Sonnet. The next way to get ahead of 99% of agencies is to select the right application to use. Obviously, there are a lot more popular applications like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, but for agency use, like with the work that I do, these applications are child's play and can barely get you anywhere before your context window runs out, and then you have to start a whole new conversation, which we all love doing. For agency use, using an AI IDE coding application like VS Code, Cursor, Windsurf, or even Anti-Gravity with natural language, and if you watch what it says and let the AI agent teach you something, you'd be really surprised how fast you can learn this. The biggest advantage of using these applications are that you have full control over what model that you want to use, no matter who the model is. These applications will write code, they will save files to your computer, and they will rip through any CSV file faster than you know it, not to mention actually control your computer and even your browser. So just as an example here, I talk about it a lot, but I'm definitely in Cursor all day with multiple instances across multiple Mac minis. And you can see right here, I have different modes. So we have agent mode, which will actually do things like create files, it'll execute terminal commands. We also have plan mode. Plan mode is super powerful because you can go into a Cursor folder instance, right? Brand new directory, and you can go into plan mode, and then you'll notice that it turns yellow, and you can just literally brain dump your idea, your GTM motion, your application, whatever you want to do, and it will help you plan strategically everything that you need to do in order to get off to a great start. And then we have ask, which is basically just talking, and it's not going to actually do anything. What it'll do is give you everything you need, just like ChatGPT, but it won't actually do anything for you. The other thing here is you can clearly see we have multiple models to be able to select which one I want to do for my particular use case. I could also go on auto if I'm trying to just go off on a whim and trust the system. But for me, I know which one I want to use for specific use cases, which right now the thing to use is Sonnet 4.5. But you can clearly see this is more of a super agent because it allows you to really do a whole lot of things a lot more. And this is just Cursor agent. Using something like Augment agent gives me even more power to be able to do multi-LLMs, multi-agents across multiple things here. And then I'm not even mentioning Claude Code, Gemini, things like that. The next way to get ahead of 99% of agencies is to know the difference between an open source model and a closed source model. A closed source model is the most common, which means you cannot host it locally and is proprietary to the maker, much like GPT 5.1, Grok 4, Claude Sonnet 4.5. But I would challenge you to actually download an open source model like GPT OSS 20B to your computer using something like LM Studio or Ollama, and you can use these models completely offline and for so many use cases. The other advantage to using open source models is to use specific ones for whatever you want to do. Things like Hugging Face is a great place to try these models out, where if you're denied a request to do something because ChatGPT or Claude says, I can't do that, the right open source model will give you the answer that you want. The fifth way to get ahead of 99% of agencies is to know how to use MCP servers. MCP servers is catching a lot of attention finally by many people, and it has its quirks for sure, but if you know how to use them and know how they work and you know how to connect them, they are a major unlock towards making your AI agents actually do things for you. Going back into something like Cursor, you'll notice that I have quite a bit of MCP servers that I use for different use cases. Like Firecrawl MCP I use quite heavily because we're able to do several different tool calls, like scrape a website, we can map a website, we can search, we can crawl, we can do all things when it comes to web scraping. If I ask the agent, look at this website and use Firecrawl MCP to do this, it's actually going to call the tool and it will retrieve back everything that I need to in order to pull in context around web scraping. There's also Think Tool, which it allows it to think. We have Browser MCP, which actually will navigate my browser. It will actually do clicks. It will actually type. It will actually code through forms. So when I'm building like a SaaS app or a form or anything like that using like React or Next.js, it will literally debug and read the console, and the feedback loop is so much tighter at being able to just navigate through things. So that way I don't have to keep going through and typing forms and all these kinds of things. We have Contact 7, which allows me to pull the latest documents on things. So using this MCP allows, basically with LLMs, they have a certain cutoff date. So if I know there's a new technology or if I want to reference the latest one, it will call Contact 7 in order to pull that in. And then of course we have Sora. So Sora I use quite heavily in order to generate content, but we can create a video, we could remix a video, get video status, all that kind of thing. And there's also Nano Banana, being able to create images. Another one too is in my Claude instance, I have multiple MCP servers. So I will actually use ClickUp, which I actually use this in Cursor as well, because if we have different clients, different instances, I can just say create a task and it's going to create a task. It'll check off a task. It'll do all the things. So that way for me can stay organized and my employees can stay organized and we're all humming away, just doing our thing. We have good old Firecrawl MCP. We have HeyReach MCP, and then also Instantly MCP. And we have multiple tools, which you can see right here, being able to do a number of different actions, such as launch a campaign, disable a campaign, count unread emails. It'll actually read your Unibox and then reply. We can list emails. We can get analytics. These are all things that make your AI system actually usable and turns it into an agent because it will actually do things. So this is why I would say definitely get keen and aware of MCP servers, because the more you know and the more you interact with them, the better you're going to be in actually leveraging this technology to actually do things. The sixth way to get ahead of 99% of agencies is automations. This is where things get real saucy, but utilizing all of these aspects I mentioned and then applying them for automations is huge. Just as an example here, I'm kind of pulling back the curtain a bit. One thing we always do is, I'm on Zoom records all the time, and one of the things after that's done is it'll actually send a webhook, which is catching the data, and then what we'll do is we will process it. So the first thing Zoom wants to know is this valid? So we'll send a response to that to know that yes, the webhook is alive and valid. And then we're going to go through, we're going to get the transcript, we're going to extract key info, we want to get the access token because that's temporary, we're going to get the participants, we're going to formulate that in JavaScript to really clean the code. We're actually going to get the transcript, so the full transcript, and then I'm going to use an agent to simply classify what type of call it is. So we usually have client sync calls, I have sales calls, I have miscellaneous calls. I want to make sure I can classify it in such a way where it can actually read the transcript and be able to navigate the workflow for what we want to do here. So currently we have three different ones. We have Tofu sales, we have client sync, and then we just have miscellaneous. And then one thing thing we'll do, if it's a tofu sales call, I send this to a sales agent where we're using Claude Opus because I want the big model to actually think, right, and give me a good answer. I even gave it the think tool just so I can really make sure the quality is good and that it takes its time. And then what I did is I gave it Firecrawl MCP so that way it can actually research the website even more to bring in context around what it needs to do in order to really make sure that, number one, this is a sales opportunity. Maybe there's something we didn't cover or something I didn't really realize going into the sales call. I just want this as additional context. The other thing that we'll do as well is bring in areas where I can actually improve. So I'll basically want to say, being in sales, you always want to be your own advocate. And I even put here, be brutally honest in qualifying and coaching. Brandon wants real feedback, not sugarcoating. So I will sit there and I will go through everything, being able to know, like, hey, what are we looking at deal size, right? Like, what is realistic here to know, like, what is fair but marketable? Because in our business, things are always evolving. Everybody's in a different place. So this right here is just giving me context and being able to articulate sales. So then we're structuring this in JavaScript. We send this to the Slack channel so I can analyze and be able to see on the application that I'm in every single day. And then we'll actually delegate this to ClickUp to actually put this into my ClickUp so that way I can have a task in order to do the next thing. And then we have client sync. We will sync with our clients quite often because we aim to be a long-term partner. We want to stay aligned and making sure that things are humming away, and to make sure that we are really just a true value partner. So it will automatically know that if we synced with the client, we'll be able to know and cover action items. We can cover anything that we need to discuss in terms of what needs to happen. Then from here, we simply break it down into tasks, and then we send that to the Slack channel. And then from here, we'll actually assign them into ClickUp as well. And then from here, we have miscellaneous. I haven't quite figured out what I want to do with that yet, but for now, I just send it to the Slack channel. So for now, this is where it is. Obviously, this is kind of just some quick workflow that I whipped up, being able to automate. And clearly I'm using agents here. I mean, I'm using 5 agents just to be able to navigate things, but this saves me from having to go into Zoom Info and download the transcript or try to remember what's happening here, and then also to delegate to my team different tasks and things like that need to happen. It's all just happening all the time. All right, now the 7th and final way to get ahead of 99% of agencies is very simple, actually, and that is to read the documentation. Seriously though, all of this stuff is so new. Even the makers themselves don't even know what they release in the wild until people like me experiment with it, push them to their limits, and really start to see some amazing results for so many use cases, including business growth. Now, the documentation might be boring, but this has seriously let me continue to stay sharp and knowing how to use these AI models in the absolute best way I can with how things are moving. And all you need to do is really just dive into the documents. Like, for example, with Claude right here, I just typed in Claude documentation, and you can even see right here, they're really trying to make it easy as possible to dive in. Get started. Features, what's new, AI API reference, the console. And then there's also ways to talk about prompt context editing, different ways to prompt, stuff like that, and being able to really just get super specific with your models. Documentation is the source of truth when it's something so new, right? The AI revolution is clearly already crazy, but I'm betting everything I just mentioned in this video to you now. If you get these 7 things down, you will most definitely be 99% ahead of your competitors without question. Now, I don't have a tutorial for everything I just shared because clearly this is pulling back the curtain just a bit, but what I do have is a tutorial on instantly.ai, which we use to grow all our businesses that we work with using cold email. So click here to watch a full tutorial on Instantly and learn exactly how to set up a cold email campaign of your very own from complete scratch, even as a beginner, and start sending emails to grow your business. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.